to another episode of Lucas Live. Yes, we're back here this evening. Some of you were here with us this morning, and you were enjoying an amazing broadcast. If you guys didn't see this morning's broadcast, it's going to look the same. Had the same hat, same shirt, same background, same stuff. So you're like, which one was it? This is part 2, so you'll know that this is part 2 because it's labeled part 2. But you want to go back and watch the first piece, how to find reconciliation after rape. We're talking with Santoria Sawyer, a phenomenal speaker, author, thought leader. I mean, she's brilliant. She brought so much energy, so much engagement, so much education, motivation, liberation. That's what we're here for here on Lucas Live. And she did it. She brought it. And this morning, for those who weren't here or who were, our broadcast cut off. We had some technical difficulties. Hello, Dominique Kaiser. Dominique Kaiser, I don't know you, but I saw that you wanted to know when we were coming back on, and you were all in the comments, and you was like, when y'all coming back? What's up? What happened? Who turned the lights out? Well, we are back. So we're glad you're here. So glad you're here. For everybody who's joining us, we're really excited. If you're watching this by replay and you saw this morning's episode, I know why you're back. Because we left you with a cliffhanger on purpose. Okay, I'm lying. It wasn't on purpose. We had technical difficulties. I had technical difficulties. Ladies and gentlemen, tomorrow morning at 8 a.m., our episode of Lucas Live is going to be behind the scenes of Lucas Live. We're going to talk to my manager and producer, and we're going to talk about the show. We're going to talk about them and their businesses and a little bit about their lives, and I'm going to share some things with you guys about the show. There are technical difficulties. We are right now recording a live podcast. So you guys are really, what I want you to think of is you're watching the recording of a podcast, but it's live and you get to watch the video. You get to see it. You ever watch a radio show now and they have cameras in the studio and you get to see the cameras in the studio in the Breakfast Club and they show the clip and, you know, somebody's in there and they talking and they're on the mic, but they're just recording a radio show. We're recording a podcast here and we bring you guys in as a part of the show. The audience is a part of the show. We take your comments. We put comments on the screen. We answer your questions. We ask that you engage and we engage with you. So it's so much fun. But sometimes there's technical difficulties. If you were watching a recorded show, these things would have happened. You'd have never known. They'd have cut the tape, edit it, slice it, split it, smack it up, flip it. I don't know what they would have done. But anyway, you would have never known. But watching it live, it went down. It went down. So maybe tomorrow morning at 8 a.m., if you guys join us then, I will share some more information about what went wrong this morning. Very interesting, and what are we going to do about it? How are we going to fix those problems? That's what it's all about. So as you guys join the broadcast, we want to thank you whether you're here on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, Periscope, wherever you're coming from. We always ask, as always, that you share this broadcast. You don't know who needs to hear this information. You don't know who's struggling with something. You don't know who needs a little motivation, a little inspiration today. So please, please, please share this broadcast as you guys come into the room. We always talk to our audience about being creators of content and curators of content. Creators of content create original posts and content, and most of us create something. But we're also curators. I curate when you share a meme, share a video, share a live stream, right? You are a curator as well. So just like all the channels that you watch, ABC, BET, MTV, CBS, Fox, they have original, Netflix, they have original shows. They also curate content, as in they show other people's content or licensed content. Well, guess what? Right now you have a free license to share this broadcast. So please do so. Share this broadcast on your page. Share it with family and friends. Text somebody, call somebody, let somebody know. Part 2 is on, and they don't want to miss it. We are excited to have you guys here this evening. So we're not going to take any longer. I want us to get into the broadcast, get into the show. Tonight we're going to go for just about 30 minutes. You guys heard most of the story this morning, and we are going to kind of rewind a little bit. We'll tell a little bit. We'll have Santoria tell a little bit of her story that she shared this morning, and we're going to continue the dialogue. We'll continue to hear from you, and she'll continue to share her story. So without any further delay, I'd love to once again, for the second time in the same day, for the first time ever on Lucas Live, the same guest twice on the same day, I'd like to invite to the show Miss Santoria Sawyer. Welcome to the show.
Hey, Lucas. It's great to be back.
So glad to have you. We had a sudden mishap this morning. My computer kind of died. You know what I mean? So what?
crashed the system.
Yeah, exactly. We broke
I
the
like that
internet.
story better.
We broke the internet clearly. There were so many people on, so many people engaged. It was so much fun. And regardless of whether all those people come back or not, right now we are going to record this. We're going to get this story down so that we can share it with others, so that people can hear it, people can know it, and people can be inspired by it. So you started sharing with us this morning. Young Santoria was a really, really, really good kid. She followed the rules. She did really well in school. She was lucky to have two fathers. However, at some point, something went wrong with your stepfather, who you were living with at the time, and things took a turn for the worse in your life. And you started to tell us that story. So, can you pick it up and tell the audience again a little bit from where you started, and then kind of walk us up to where we were and kind of how that first incident happened, and then we'll continue the story from there.
Definitely. So, Cliff Notes version, right,
Yes.
of this morning's podcast.
Yes.
Yeah. So I was, like I said, I was born and raised in Toledo, Ohio. I lived with my mother and my stepfather, but I did have a really a good relationship with my biological father. But like you said, I had two dads in my eyes, and so. Growing up, I really loved and cared for and had a deep sense of empathy for my stepfather, which is why when he started doing what he was doing, it was so devastating to me. But what actually happened was when I was 12 years old, he started molesting me, and it went on for about 10 months until I finally told and put him in prison. So that's the extreme Cliff Notes version of that. And
Yes.
I will leave it at that. But mostly like what we talked about this morning, guys, is that education, how it played a huge role in my life at that point, how it saved my life, how I used it as a coping mechanism to get through that adversity, and how I held on to it as a sense of survival, and how, now I'm in a different phase of my life where I'm more focused on the healing and not so much the coping, because
I love it.
That was the coping
a great message.
That,
yes.
Yeah, and the coping mechanisms. I really strongly encourage parents teach their children coping mechanisms, because it builds, resiliency in them. But when you become an adult and you got some things that you dealt with in your childhood, I really, really encourage you to seek healing, because it's not the same.
I love it, and I'd love for us to share again. Something you shared earlier about coping and healing. I think it was so important, and I think so many of the people watching this morning were moved by it, that coping is a thing, healing is a thing. Help us understand from your perspective what that means and how you learn the differences.
So coping is survival, okay? When you are healing, you can, when you actually take the time to heal, you can thrive in life. But coping, it's just survival mode. Coping, like you said, looks like there's a tornado happening outside, and you run downstairs and you hide and you cover and you take protection to weather the storm. Healing looks like going upstairs after the tornado and cleaning up the mess. That's what healing looks like. It's a dirty business, guys. And so for me and my personal story, I had been coping most of my life. I mean, so much so that, like I said, I held on to education as my ticket out of all the chaos I was raised in. And when I finally graduated college, everything came crashing down and hitting me all at once, because the truth of the matter is, the thing that I was using to help me cope with the adversity that I was facing, which was education, it was over now. I just got my college degree. Now what? So I had to take a look in the mirror. And for several years, many people don't know, but I went through a severe depression, because I was like, now what? Now I was faced with and left with the pieces, the rubble after the storm. And it was finally time to start cleaning it up. But I don't even think, I think at that point in my life, I was just stuck with the realization that there even was still a rubble. Because
Yes.
Coping can confuse you.
Wow.
Coping can make you think that you done healed from something.
Yes.
And you ain't healed from nothing. You still in the basement hiding, but you don't even know that debris that's upstairs, because you're afraid to come outside.
Right.
And so that's what coping was for me. I hadn't even come upstairs. So when I finally got up to the top level, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is a mess. Like, I was a mess for years, and I didn't start going to therapy until a year ago, when I finally was like, man, after I got my book done, I was like, okay, I told that story of coping. But next I plan to tell the story of that in between time, that in between the coping and the healing, because that's a journey of its own.
And that will be your next book.
That would be my next book. Yep.
That'll be your next book. So let's talk a little bit about. We didn't get as much into the book, and again, there's a little more of your story that we'd like to hear about your book. Tell us the title of your book, and really help us understand what the book is about and what we can expect from your book.
So the title of my book is called The Broken Crayon That Colored Still. It's not to be confused with Broken Crayons Still Color, because that's a book too. It's an awesome series, actually. But this one is called The Broken Crayon That Colored Still, and it journeys my experience from child molestation to college graduation. And like I mentioned to you earlier, I read the quote that I literally put on the back of my book, which was something my stepfather told me when I was really, really young. He said, "If your mother was still pregnant with you when I got out of prison, I probably would have knocked you out of her stomach." And I remember hearing those words as a young kid, and so and processing them different than probably most people would have. And that's what my book is about. My book is about making a decision. The sub title in my book is "One Kid, One Decision," because I talk about everything that happens in this book. I detail some of the nitty gritty, like dirty, uncomfortable stories of what happened to me. But then I talk about how I made the decision to use that particular incident or that story and how I processed it. So when my stepdad looked at me, he told me he probably would have knocked you out of, I probably would have knocked you out of your mother's stomach when I got out of prison.
And let's, I'm sorry. And so for those that didn't hear this story this morning, her stepfather told her, if I was home, when your mom was pregnant, I would have knocked you out of your mom's stomach. He was saying, him and her mom, this man and her mom were in this relationship prior to him going to prison. He goes to prison. She gets into a relationship with someone else. She gets pregnant, has a baby. He comes home. They pick up the relationship at some point along the way, and now he has this stepdaughter who is by another man, with the woman who he had been with prior. Never. A man would hope that would never happen, but to look at the child and say to the child, if I was there, I would have knocked you out of your mom's stomach, as in I would have personally aborted you. He said that to you, and yet somehow you guys were still able to have how did you guys function together? It wasn't, when you say you have two fathers, it doesn't sound like you hated this man.
So I think because, when you're a kid, right, what is a father? You kind of associate it with who's there, right? So to me, I was probably even closer with him than my biological father because he was there. Yeah. He was there every day after school. He picked us up. He cooked. He helped us with our homework. He did everything. I mean, we wanted a bike. We need new shoes. We fall down. He picked us up. He was there. His physical presence. So as a kid, that's kind of what you associate with who's your dad, right? Yeah. And so when he said that to me, it's so crazy because he went to prison for several years, which is why I think in his heart he knew, like, well, what did I expect? I mean, after being gone for so many years, it's like, what did I expect? But when he said that, when he actually got out of prison, I was only 3 months old. Only 3 months old, 90 days. So literally, like, when I heard him say that to me, I just remember thinking, like, man, like, that means you could have, which means you didn't, which means I'm supposed to be here for a reason, which means, like, this was intentional. Like, to me, like, God was like, this is intentional. You're supposed to be here. You have work to do. So, yeah, that's how I processed it. And I made a decision again to not take that and process it as something that was going to be like defeating. Yeah. I didn't process it as something that was like terrible. It was like, to me, I processed it like, oh, okay, well, psych, joke's on you. I was already here. Right. So you missed the deadline, buddy.
Right. Sorry about that. Right. Yeah. So this man still functioned. You said you had two fathers. This man was there every day. So in the eyes of a child, this is your dad. From 3 months, he's there. And then you grew up in this house with this man. I think you said he had some issues, some troubles along the way. Obviously, he had done some time in prison. But so that's a long time from 3 months to 12 years old. So up until that time, now you did say you had a bit of a fear of him. Was it a natural reverence, a respect, daddy don't play, or was it something else? What was that like for you?
A little bit of both. Definitely a little bit of both, but also because, we had some domestic violence in our home, and because of that, I definitely feared him. And then, like I said, he had like mental health issues. So I just, like, there would be days where he would just be this angel on earth. I mean, literally, it was like almost bipolar. I don't want to say that to diagnose him with anything, but to say that, like, he would be amazing on a one day, and then we just never knew if he would wake up and snap on day 5 or 6. And it would happen every so often. So because of that, we knew what he was capable of, and that's what kind of drove that fear.
Yeah. So you go through life all these years. Did you have siblings?
I do. I have 3 younger siblings with my parents, but I have 18 siblings total.
Okay. Okay. As a host, when someone says they have 18 siblings, I just smile and nod. Okay. All right. I can take that. 18. All right. No further questions. On the 18 siblings, that's a whole nother show. All right. So 18, but you had 3 younger siblings in the house with you.
Yes.
And one day you're the oldest. Okay. So 12 years old. Let's move forward. Let's get to the day in question. You shared a little bit of this. You shared this morning. For those who missed it, make sure you go back and watch part 1 of this. You want to watch the whole thing. It was alive. It was electric. It was dynamic. And the devil is a lie. He tried to shut the technology down. But guess what, devil? We back. All right. So here we are again to finish this story. We're going to be here for another 15, 20 minutes, ladies and gentlemen, so she can finish this story. Go ahead. Tell us about this day when things change forever for you.
So the day that it first happened, like I said, I had got my bus ID taken away from me at school, and my stepdad told me, like, I'm gonna punish you for that. When you're a kid, if your parent tells you, like, when I get back home, you're in trouble, you're just terrified. I mean, you're like, oh my gosh. So I'm thinking, the normal punishment. He was either gonna get on me, ground me, spank me, or whatever. But when he didn't get home till really late that night, my mom was at work. She was working a third shift. And so I just remember him, I remember walking out of my room and walking past his bedroom and seeing the belt hanging on the end of the bed. And I really was like, oh man, I know what that means. But he told me to go downstairs and he didn't take the belt. And it was really dark in the house. Everyone was asleep, all my younger siblings. And when we walked downstairs, that day, he just made me stand in front of him and turn around in circles while he just touched me and looked at me. And then, of course, like I told you earlier, it was at that time that he established that dominance by having the Smith & Wesson laying on the couch covered up in a white towel, saying to me that if you tell anyone, I'll kill you. And so that's how it started. And like I said, it escalated very, very, very quickly. It went from looking and touching to making me take off my clothes and like to oral things to and then to trying to penetrate me. So that like I said, it escalated very, very quickly, and it lasted for 10 months.
Ladies and gentlemen, briefly, I just want to put some information on the screen. If you or someone you know has been a victim of sexual assault, there's a phone number here for you guys to reach out. This is the national hotline. We don't want to open up wounds and leave people open on the surgery table. Okay, so 1-800-656-4673 is the number to call if you or someone you know is or was a victim of sexual assault and you are looking for some help. You need to get out of a situation. You're concerned about someone you know. You don't know how to help a friend or family member. You have a suspicion of something, but you don't know if something is truly going on. We want to offer help. That number is scrolling across the top of your screen. Take a screenshot of it, write it down. Please be aware. You can Google it. You can look it up. The sexual assault hotline, the National Sexual Assault Hotline, is here for you guys because we know that she is not the only victim. And somebody right now is still coping. They're not healing because you haven't admitted it. You haven't gotten the help. You haven't gotten the counseling. You haven't talked to anyone. You're holding the secret alone, or you told one friend once upon a time and you're not even friends with that person anymore, and you just can't bear to talk about it. And you think if you don't talk about it, it's not real. And you're telling yourself, I'm okay though. I'm okay though. You may be okay, but you may be supposed to be flying. You may be walking fine, but you're limping, and God meant for you to fly. He meant for you to soar. And because you haven't dealt with the pain, you're still just coping. Coping is just making it. God wants you to be restored. He wants to reconcile you. He wants to fix you and make you whole again. It's time to come out of the basement. The storm is over. It's time to assess the damage and start rebuilding the house. Santoria is here to help us with that by sharing her story. So that day, it started a cycle. After that, how did this play out? Again, what was going on? Where were your family members? And then how did it progress from there?
So it would happen in the mornings more often than not. Sometimes it would happen throughout the day, just kind of randomly. if he could ever get me alone. But mostly it would happen in the mornings when my mom would go to work. And so he would drop her off at work really early in the morning, like 6 o'clock or maybe even earlier than that. And I just remember he would come back and wake me up first before he would wake my siblings up to get them ready for school. So he would make me come downstairs, and then he would do whatever he wanted to do that day. And then I would go back upstairs. I would crawl up in a ball in the bathroom, clean myself up, and keep it pushing. And then, so like I said, it would just be different times. I remember one time in particular that I'll never forget. We were watching a boxing match. I come from a boxing family. We love boxing. And we were watching a boxing match. And I remember sitting on the end of the couch, and I just felt him kind of like staring at me. And it was actually like on his birthday. It was on his actual birthday. And I remember we had such a great day that day. Like, I baked him a cake. I mean, we did everything because I was trying my best. I thought, if I just be an amazing daughter and I show him I love him, then he'll stop hurting me. But that day we had an amazing day, and I remember it was like my day to clean the kitchen. So everybody was all exhausted. Everybody's going upstairs, getting ready to go to bed, and I was like procrastinating on my chores. So I still had to clean the kitchen, and he knew that. So he sat there on the couch and waited for me to get up and go in the kitchen. And at the time, I grew up from very humble beginnings. So we didn't have like air conditioning in our house. We had it in one room of the house. And there was a sheet that we had stapled or nailed up to the wall to keep the air in one room. And so I remember walking in behind, or him getting up and telling me to go behind the sheet in the other room while my mom was upstairs getting my siblings ready for bed. And he molested me behind the sheet of the thing while my siblings were upstairs. And I talk about that in my book. It's crazy because I had to reference his birthday, and I said apparently cake wasn't the only thing I'd be shoving in my mouth that night. And I'm I'm pretty blunt with my book. I try to, for the average adult or like high schooler, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But the reason why I do it is because, one of my mentors used to always tell me, Santoria, beating around the bush ain't gonna get us nowhere but around the bush. I try to intentionally make people uncomfortable when I talk about this, because it is uncomfortable. And that's why we need to have these uncomfortable conversations. I'm not afraid to say it. If somebody's going to say it, like, that's what he did to me, then I hope it makes your skin crawl. It should make your skin crawl. And so it should infuriate you, and like when you hear about that happening to a 12-year-old or 13-year-old, I was 13 at the time. So that was, like I said, several months later.
Sure.
But he was progressively getting more and more comfortable with doing things to me. So like I remember one time, like it was like the last day of school for my younger siblings, and I wanted to go see my old teachers because I was a teacher's pet. I wanted to go with them because I was already out of school. I was in junior high. I wanted to go with them. But he made me stay home. And my mom okayed me to go. So he dropped her off at work, got the kids together and everything. I'm getting ready to get out the car and go into the school with my siblings, and he stopped me. He said, "No, you're coming home with me." And he molested me when we got home. And so he got more and more aggressive with it, more and more comfortable with doing it in random times. Like I think that day my cousin actually came to the door, and she said she felt like something was off. But of course, you just never know, because I was just sitting on the floor, like just terrified, probably shaking. I don't know exactly what I was doing at that point, but she just, just so he got more and more comfortable with it, even so much so that the last time he did it, he tried to cut my fingers off. And I remember.
Talk to us about that. That was something you shared. And first, let me thank you again for your transparency. This is a difficult conversation. Many people in many families, especially minority families and black families, we don't talk about stuff. You just deal with it. It's like, cope for the rest of your life. Don't bring that mess on our family. Don't shame our family. No. And you're going as far as to writing a book and putting it in a book and describing it in these very graphic terms in a lot of ways, right? But to say to people, this is happening. And if we don't wake up and we don't start looking around and we don't start paying attention and we don't start checking our instincts that says something's wrong here, something doesn't seem right, there's going to be more and more victims. And I can just say, too many girls, too many of our young ladies and our girls and eventually our women in society have gone through things like this, and these stories go untold. And then they're not happy. They can't have healthy relationships. They're struggling to have healthy sex lives because now they're overly sexual or don't want to have sex. And now it's ruining every part of their life. And they don't know why, and they're not getting the help they need. Your boldness, your transparency is liberating someone. This is about education, motivation, liberation here on Lucas Live, and you are doing a phenomenal job at that. Thank you so much. So continuing this. So So you're telling this graphic story, and yet you and your mom have a relationship. We don't have a lot of time, so I want us to get a little forward to somehow you had some healing and some reconciliation. If you don't mind helping us understand, how did you get to that, and how long was he in prison? Because you put him in prison for what he did. Help us understand that story and then how it went from there.
So the day he tried to cut my fingers off, I remember sitting there and I was just like begging. I remember begging him first of all, but then like crying because he was like actually starting to cut. And so I just closed my eyes. I was like, God, please, if you get me out of this, I promise I'll tell. And I swear, some supernatural, I don't know what, he just dropped the knife. He dropped the knife, and I only had like one cut on my finger. And he dropped the knife, and he told me just to go upstairs. I went upstairs. He fell asleep on the couch. I tapped him on the shoulder after about an hour, and I said, "Hey, can I take Charbel? Can I take my siblings to the local library for the summer program?" And they said, he said, "Sure, go ahead." So I walked my three younger siblings down to the local library. I convinced them to actually go an opposite direction because I told them, I said, if we go here, I'll take you guys to McDonald's and get you breakfast. I've been hustling since I was like 11, so I had my own money. And so I was like, I'm gonna take you guys here and buy you some breakfast. It was in the summer months. It was July. And I walked him downtown to the McDonald's, and then we walked over the bridge into the police station. And when I told, they immediately went to go find him. When they found him after 3 days, because he was hiding, they found him after 3 days. And when they found him, he just told them, he said, "She's not a liar." He said, "Whatever she said, I did, I did." And so because of that,
how brave you had to be to do that. So many people have still not faced their accuser or the person who assaulted them. I'm sorry, they haven't said anything, and I know everybody's not ready right now, and I know this is easier said than done. But at 13, you walked to a police station and told them what had been happening for 10 months.
And when I did, it was very terrifying because so I had to set it up. I had to be very strategic. The reason why I asked to go to the library is because I knew if we were seen walking in that direction, it could be justified. And we actually were spotted, which is why he got away.
Wow.
Because we were spotted by somebody, at the time who told us, like, "You're a young kid. Like, we look really little walking across the downtown bridge into the police station."
Right.
And so when we got there, they also made me call my mom. I did it specifically that day because my mom had started going back to school, and her school was 45 minutes away. So I knew, okay, I timed it. I was like, if I can get there and I can get there by the time he finds out if anything happens, she'll be far out. He won't be able to get to her. I'll be able to get to her first. And so I was really wanted to protect my mom. And so I ended up having to call her and tell her and everything. And like I said, he was supposed to serve a lot longer time. I think he was supposed to serve 26 years.
Wow.
But because he pled insanity, and because he has mental health issues, and that is very true. He actually does. It got dropped down from a rape or a molestation to a gross sexual imposition charge. Which means it's not even we're not going to go into that. The justice system is very interesting.
Yes.
But they dropped it down to that charge. He served 8 years, and when he got out of prison, my mother took him back. So let me tell you. So
tell us now, you ladies and gentlemen, and you tell us your story. You tell us your truth. When he got out of prison after 8 years, after not serving anywhere near the amount of time he should have served for what he did to you, an innocent child, your mother took him back. And so, ladies and gentlemen, somebody else knows this story. Somebody else has this story in their life. And you don't have to tell us all here in the comment. You don't have to. But you know it's you. And that's okay. And we're praying for you. And we're praying for help and healing. And we hope you see the number to the hotline if you need further help. We hope that you seek counseling. We hope that you seek help to heal. So I didn't mean to cut you off. I want you to continue with that story. But I just wanted people to pause and know that may be your story too. And we hear you and we see you and we know. So please continue.
Yeah, and I will say this: if anybody is dealing with sexual abuse or they have an abuser, a lot of times I get, the world will tell us like, okay, take your time, come out when you're ready. I'm gonna tell you, I pray and beg of you right now on this podcast to stop living in that fear.
Wow.
That person that's doing that to you or did that to you is probably 9 times out of 10 going to do it to somebody else.
Yes,
I was not
yes.
the first. I was not the first. And I
Wow.
pray to God, I will be the last. But you have to say something, guys. Stop. That fear could be hurting somebody else. Like, please, 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 please speak up.
Thank
And
you.
so, I did that, and that's like I said, it was hard. It took me several months because I wanted to be strategic about how I told, who I told, when I told, and make sure everyone was safe in the process. That's why I took my siblings with me. It's why I made sure my mom was away. It's why I went directly to the police station and not to anybody in my family. So, be smart. Be smart. Try to know the system, know what's going on, and try to and be smart about it. I will say that to protect yourselves. But for me, when I told, and my mom was initially very, 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 very angry. But like anything, grief, that fear of loss kicks in, right? So immediately, what happened is 3 days after they caught him, she dropped me off downtown to tell him it didn't happen.
Wow.
A lot of people don't know that. And so she did it out of her own fear. Like, oh my gosh, we can fix this. Because here we got, now you got a mom who's a single mom to 4 kids and trying to feed all these kids and take care of her. Instantly, her fear kicked in, and she reacted out of her own trauma. Moving forward, though, 8 years, I knew it was coming. I think I knew it was. I think I knew it was coming. Because they would like visit him when I was in school. They would go see him and talk about him, and there were letters and phone conversations. So I kind of knew what was coming. It caused a big explosion when I was like 17, and I actually moved out of my mom's house and moved into my biological father's house, and I did my senior year of high school there because I was so hurt because I was coming to the terms of, but again, I just focused on school, coping. I just focused, put my head down, focused on school, and was like, you know what, if I go and I get rich and I go make a lot of money and be very successful, my mother will choose me, right? She'll choose me. But that didn't happen. And there are going to be people in your life where they're not going to choose you. If you're listening to this, I just want you to know God chooses you and you can choose you. And at the end of the day, that's the only choice that matters. So for me, it took a time to come to that reality, because like here I felt like a motherless child for all these years because me and my mom, although I loved her and I never stopped talking to her, I felt like she was no longer she didn't feel like a mother. She felt more like a friend. And it was like, I felt like a motherless child for so many years. And I remember dealing with that. And that's what hit me. That's what hit me in 2012. It's what hit me again when I had my own daughter, like, wow, I hope what, it just, I had so many thoughts when I had my
Yeah.
daughter. And I said, that's a whole nother conversation. But,
Yes.
I'll leave it with this, with the relationship with my mom, because I know we're running out of time.
Sure.
You know, love, let me, hate is a lot more energy draining and life
Yes.
sucking than love and forgiveness.
Absolutely.
I know it's easier said than done, but it's a deliberate choice. Like for most people, they don't know. My mother is still with my stepfather today. Do I have a relationship with my stepfather? No. Do I adore my mother? Absolutely. I love my mother because I'm gonna tell you what, to me, in my opinion, only a person who doesn't love themselves enough and only a person who struggles with their own internal traumas and demons enough would choose their child's rapist.
Right over them.
So I'm gonna love her through that. She may never, let me tell you, she may never come to the reality of her decision and her choice. But I'm gonna tell you what, she not gonna go to the grave not thinking that I loved her.
Yeah.
I love my mother. That's what unconditional love is. That's what that is.
Yes.
We have boundaries. We definitely have
Thank you.
boundaries.
Absolutely.
But I love her. I have prayed more for her and my stepfather than I probably have myself. I love her. I forgive her. It took
Amazing.
me time to forgive her. And I write about the exact moment in my book where I did forgive her and I forgave my stepfather. I write about that in my book if you want to read that. But that
Yes.
forgiveness was a choice, right? And like I write this in my book. I say, the meaning of the Latin root of the word decision means to cut off. What that means is when you decide to forgive somebody, when you decide to not let your pain cripple you, you're cut off from feeling sorry for yourself. You're cut off from that hatred. You're cut off from throwing a pity party. You're cut
Yes.
off from giving up. You're cut off from bitterness. When you make a decision to move forward in life, you're cut off from letting the past
Yes.
hold you back anymore. And so for me, I made that decision at a young age, at a very young age. But guess what? it's a decision I've had to make every day, and I will make it every day moving forward if I have to, because not making that decision is not an option. So if I have to do it every day until the day I leave this earth, I will do it. I will do
Yes.
it because what comes from that decision
Yes.
is far greater than anything that could come from me hating or not forgiving my mother, or
Wow.
being bitter and feeling sorry for myself.
Santoria, this is so, so powerful. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I saw you on a black business page or something recent, and I
Hmm.
said, I have to try to have her on my show. I have to reach out. I have to see what happens. I reached out to you. We spoke. You shared this story like this with me one on one, and I was blown away the whole time. I just kept saying, "Wow, wow!" But yet you had this sense of peace and this sense of levity. Like somehow, through all that has tried to crush you, it's like you're rising more than most. Like somehow through all this adversity, you have this air of peace and love and this Christ-like demeanor, which I think is so powerful and so meaningful and such an example. It's easy to go places and hear people read the Bible. It's hard to go places and find people who are living the Bible, who show that the Bible is the living word, who show us that God is still alive and God is not dead because he lives in us and people like you. So thank you, thank you, thank you. One more time before we go, I want you to tell people how they can support you, how they can purchase your book. Ladies and gentlemen, many of you this morning jumped on her website, bought her book. You went on Amazon, you bought her book. I want more people to buy her book. Don't we want to support someone like this? If you're out there in the business world and you have an organization or a school or a college or a business or I don't know what it is, and you're thinking about having a speaker come in to light the place up, to encourage some people, to motivate some people, and to tell a real story, this is the person you need to get a hold of. Her information is here on the screen for all of you. And Santoria, if you could just tell them one more time, how can they support you? How can they get your book? How can they follow you?
Yes, so if you want to get my book, you can get it on Amazon. Again, it's called The Broken Crayon That Colored Still, or you can search my name. If you want to, it's also available on my website, www.santoriaspeaks.com. Also, if you want to support, you can subscribe to my website, but also to let me know if I can help. Let me know if I can be of service to you at your organization, your church, your women's group, your podcast, right? So this is what I do best. I wrote my book so I could have a platform to stand on, just to speak, because speaking, my voice, that's what I feel like is the gift that God gave me. And so I would love to be able to contribute to your congregation or your organization in any way possible. It's truly a passion of mine. I would do it in my sleep. So if you guys want to support that way, that's also an option.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, this was part 2. Santoria has an obligation this evening, and she was so kind to agree to come back on. She's a very busy lady here in Columbus, Ohio. You guys, if you're in her area, even more reason to check her out. But wherever you are around the world, if she could be of service to you, she wants to do so, be it virtually. As you see, she shows up so great virtually, and or bring her to your organization if things are safe there for her to do that. Check out part 1 from this morning, ladies and gentlemen. If you didn't see part 1, make sure you go check out part 1. It was dynamic. It was moving. She told more of the story. She was telling it a little slower because we weren't in such a rush, and she was able to help us feel and see and hear the dynamics of what was going on with her and her stepfather and what was going on in her mind, and how she was a great student and poured herself into education and became the valedictorian and got a full ride to college and went to Ohio State University and graduate. She tells the story. You don't want to miss it. Go back and check out part 1. It's on Lucas Live Media on YouTube. It's on Lucas Live Media here on Facebook. It's on my page. She shared it on her page. You guys can find it. Check it out. Periscope, LinkedIn, wherever you're at. It's there under Lucas Tyndale or Lucas Live Media, or under Santoria's page. Ladies and gentlemen, as always, you all have been phenomenal. Our guest today has been amazing. Show her some love. Yeah. Follow her. Support her in her business. Santoria, thank you, thank you, thank you. It's been a pleasure for me to interview you. Thank you for being with us today.
Thank you for having me, Lucas.
Everybody, thank you again. We'll see you tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. We're going to go behind the scenes of Lucas Live. My team will be here. We're going to show you how things work. It's going to be a great time. Make sure you check us out tomorrow morning at 8 a.m.